Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves.
How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. It is Tuesday, and it is back. The advanced look at all of the collected editions coming out from Marvel Comics this week, backed by popular demand. So, let's get started. Now, before going any further, I do want to thank David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us advanced copies of all of these books. These books are all due in the direct market and book market on July 18th or 19th, depending on where you buy your books. So we're looking at an epic collection, a brand new one, and we're looking at some trade paperbacks of some recent series, some ongoing series, some mini-series, and the return of a beloved character. I know my daughter was a big fan of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, a couple of Marvel Masterworks, and the latest Daredevil oversized hardcover. And as always, I leave in the description the timestamps where each of these books are going to be shown, in case you're only interested in one or two or all of them. But don't forget to smash that like button before you go and jump around the timestamps. All right, let's go ahead and start. Actually, let's start with Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. So here we have Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Menace on Wheels. Now, if you have the previous trade paperbacks, the stories in here are not included in those because this is a brand new collection of a 2022 series, collecting all 5 issues of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. This time around, though, it's Jordan Ifueko who is doing the writing, Alba Glass doing the pencils, and then you have these inkers here, the colorists, and the letters. So it's not the same creative team. Brandon Montclair and Amy Reeder and Natasha Bustos are not reuniting to tell the story of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, but it's a continuation of this particular character. So here she is, Lunella Lafayette. I think my daughter and I had a discussion as to how you actually pronounce it. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right away, this is definitely a kid's book. It's a lot of fun. And it's interesting because when I think of kids' books and like the way I used to read them, I would think like Star Comics back in the day, or the Archie comics, even though they probably weren't geared towards the younger audience, but this definitely is in the way that it's written and the way the characters are portrayed. So, just to kind of give you what the premise of this is. So Lunella is a super genius. She also happens to be an Inhuman and also fights crime with her Devil Dinosaur. That is the same dinosaur from Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur created by Jack Kirby. And in the first issue of the original series, you can see what ended up happening to Moon Boy. Now, she is confronted by her parents because they don't want her to be fighting crime anymore. They don't want her dressing up. So what she does is, because she's a super genius, she decides to start a roller derby team with a bunch of other Inhuman kids. And with this team, she kind of gets to play the role of superhero. She gets to dress up, and it's kind of her secret way of going out there and fighting crime. But then she ends up really enjoying it, so it's really cute. And she meets, this is what I mean by it's so different nowadays. She meets this kid right here. This is Olivia, who goes by the name OMG Olivia, who's an influencer. So everything is social media, everything's taking selfies. So a lot different than the stories I grew up with that are, of course, geared towards kids. But this one here. But to continue with the story, OMG Olivia is not all she seems to be. As a matter of fact, she is a Kree who claims to be responsible for the creation of the Inhumans. And with her influence, or I guess her following, she plans on taking over the world. Now it's up to not just Moon Girl, but the rest of her roller derby team to help and take care of OMG Olivia. Her little dinosaur, or I guess big dinosaur, turns on her because he's being controlled. And actually, it's not the only thing that's being controlled. There's all her friends are going to be controlled, and And he's actually not the only one that's going to be controlled. There's going to be some other kids that are being controlled by this goop, if you will. The covers are done by Ken Lashley, though, who's always a welcome addition to any project. I'm a big fan of his artwork. This book retails for $15.99. Let's look at the extras. So here's the extras, variant covers. And it has 112 pages, including this really pretty one there by Peach Momoko. I think that's the only one that's done in a splash page. The rest are done in thumbnails. That is Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Menace on Wheels. Amazing Spider-Man by Zeb Wells, Volume 5, Dead Language, Part 1. So it is a Part 1, so it's not the complete Dead Language story. Now, before I open this one up, if you haven't read the Dark Web storyline, or if you haven't caught up with Zeb Wells' stories, his run on Spider-Man, maybe skip to the next book, because even the minor spoilers I'm going to be talking about in here could ruin something for you, and I don't want to ruin the reading experience for anybody. So, just throwing that out there in case you haven't read any of his stuff. Now, if you don't care about spoilers, of course, whatever, right? First thing I want to say is, I thought this cover had already been used in, I think during Big Time or Brand New Day. I could have sworn. It could just be my old brain playing tricks on me, but it looks familiar. So if you know, let me know in the comments. All right, what the heck is a almost naked Spider-Man, Peter Parker rather, running on the cover of something that you would pick up at a bookstore at the airport? Really interesting. What's interesting about this, too, is that this kicks off with Joe Kelly writing a couple of issues. So this is in the aftermath of Dark Web, and he's joined by Terry and Rachel Dodson. Then we go back to Zeb Wells and John Romita Jr. for issues 21 through 23. So this does collect issues 19 through 23 of the 2022 relaunch. All right, so after the whole Dark Web storyline, Peter Parker and Felicia Hardy decide to take a vacation. They decide to go to a spa. Now, of course, this is going to be a normal break. Everything is going to be all right. It's just for a couple of days. Nothing's going to go wrong. However, not just the White Rabbit, but a bunch of wannabes end up ruining the fun. And I will say, Terry and Rachel's artwork looks so different in here than what I'm used to. Like, at first, I didn't think it was them. I think they may have changed up their style a little bit. I mean, it's still their faces, but just the layouts sometimes, or some of the way that they would draw the characters in action poses, it just didn't have that Dodson feel to it. Not that it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, you know, people change their style up all the time. All right. Then we get to what this story is called, The Dead Language Part 1. And if you're not familiar with what's going on in the pages of Spider-Man, there's been this whole mystery since issue number 1 about what Peter Parker did to ruin Spider-Man's reputation, and it kind of broke up Mary Jane and Spider-Man, or Peter Parker. Because we thought they were going to get together by the end of Spencer's run, and then Zeb Wells throws us for a curve and says, no, they're not together because of something he did months ago. So this is the story of what he did months ago. Now, of course, Mary Jane is with Paul. Yeah, that guy. And Peter Parker's waking up in different parts of New York, but they notice that something is returning. Something that brought them together that could explain what happened in those months past. And that is the return of the Scribble Man, as the kids call it. So Peter Parker and MJ call each other, and they're like, do you see it? Do you think it is what it is? And yeah, we get the flashback of 1 year later, what happened those months back that could have led to the demise of the relationship, or that did lead. What exactly could Peter Parker have done? Without going too deep into this story, this is where you get to meet Paul, because he just kind of showed up out of nowhere. And this is where everything ties up to the, I guess it was the Brand New Day era of Spider-Man during Zeb Wells writing that particular story. There's a particular story that he touches back on, and it has ties to that. I'm not going to say what exactly is involved or how they break up, because the story still continues, and I'm a little confused too. But that's what, that's the explanation as to what's going on. But yes, Peter Parker does wake up half naked, and he needs the help of not only the Fantastic Four, but somebody he didn't think he would ever ask for help. And this book right here retails for $15.99, and it has 120 pages. Let's look at the back for extras. So here are all the variant covers. They're all the way in the back. And as I always like to stress, don't get too excited about seeing someone on the cover because sometimes they're just variant covers. It has nothing to do with the inside of the book. X-TREME X-Men by Claremont and LARROCA, A New Beginning. So every week I do this, well, except for the last couple of weeks because I haven't been here, but I'm back. I give a book the near mint condition seal of approval. This week was really hard because my heart and my subconscious is like, we have to give it to this book. And I hope I do this book justice. Now, X-TREME X-Men was a series by Claremont and LARROCA. They started it was early aughts, and it continued for about 42 issues. If you've not read that, I don't think you are going to enjoy this, because this era of X-TREME X-Men happens immediately after the last issue. So it could even spoil some things for you. So I don't recommend reading this if you want to read X-TREME X-Men. If you're waiting for the omnibus, I know the second one was delayed. If you're waiting for them, read those first and then come back to this. Or just watch the video. It doesn't matter. Whatever, it's up to you. I do want to give people a warning, though. I don't think this is as enjoyable without reading those issues. All right, let's jump in here. So in that style of storytelling like Claremont does, I have no idea how that man, and there are a few other writers that can do this, like we've seen Roger Stern, Marv Wolfman, Roy Thomas, and Tom DeFalco just come in like they never stop writing the book, and Claremont has been notorious for doing that, and I mean notorious in a good way. It's like he never stopped writing X-Men. That's what the whole X-Men Forever series was. But with this is a little bit different, because in here, he starts creating new characters. He creates new threats for our heroes. So what's happening is that Kitty Pryde, after the events of the final issue of X-TREME X-Men, starts waking up to these nightmares that are going on in her head. She starts having nightmares about this guy named Ogun. And of course, that was a character that was done away with in the pages of Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, or Shadowcat and Wolverine. So she's wondering if he's back, if he's possessing anybody, and why she's having these horrible nightmares. And Salvador LaRocca is doing the artwork in this. He's doing the pencils and the inks. Now, one thing I did love about Salvador LaRocca when he did the art in X-TREME X-Men is that there were no inks. Guru FX is the colorist, or they are the colorist. But it looks like here that there are inks on this particular artwork. But the mystery of Ogun does kick off this particular mini-series. So it's all 5 issues of this series. I love this take on the X-TREME X-Men. So by now you have the whole team here. You have Bishop, you have Sage, Gambit, Rogue, Rachel Summers, Wolverine, who wasn't really a big part of the team, but he would come. Look, he's got his Chuck Austin X-Men outfit. And of course, all led by Storm. Are you going to see, Slipstream and Lifeguard through here? Maybe. This, honestly, I'm shocked that Claremont didn't take this opportunity to bring back the Neo. But instead, he introduces us to a couple of new baddies. He introduces us to this character named the Beastie Brute. Now, he's not the only villain that shows up through these pages, but holy crap, it takes like the entire team to try to take him out. There's other villains that show up through here. And it's always interesting to go back to read these particular stories, because it's like, okay, it doesn't matter what's going to happen through these pages, because we know these characters are not going to die. We know they're not going to be changed forever. As a matter of fact, Rogue has the tattoo looking like she did in the pages of X-TREME X-Men. They all do. They all have their outfits. So the stakes aren't as high as you would think. But the story of Gambit really did show me, from the Gambit miniseries, that even though the stakes aren't up, there are things that Claremont could return to because of the introductions through these particular issues here. And I have to, LaRocca, his art has changed so much over the years. And I'm not the biggest fan of his Star Wars run. I think he did a lot of light box use. And I'm not a big fan of that style. I preferred his penciled style. I preferred much his style like that was of Carlos Pacheco. But here, I don't know. I don't know if it's the colors, it might be the nostalgia, but he was just killing it. I really dug his artwork through these pages. You know, everybody looks different, everybody has their own unique style, and it's almost goes back to those Extreme X-Men days. Like I said, this definitely would have gotten the seal of approval if I have not read another book. But, you know, can't give them all the seal of approval. But if you're a fan of Extreme X-Men, if you're a fan of Claremont's X-Men, then you owe it to yourself to read this. Let's look at the extras. There are hidden gem variants that are collected here. And I don't know why, because when I think of hidden gems variants, I think of people that are no longer with us, like Steve Ditko or Jack Kirby. So it's really interesting to see a Salvador LaRocca hidden variant or hidden gem. Here we have some variants though, like Chrissy Sulos there. David Nakayama, that is killer. I really like Jim Rugg's take on X-Men #1 with Ogun right there instead of Magneto. And then other Extreme X-Men covers. Oh, Salvador LaRocca, gorgeous Storm right there. But I think these are the original designs that he used for the book. Now, this is not collected in the second omnibus. I know people have asked me if I could ask if they can add it, and I still will because they've delayed that book. So maybe there's enough time to add this in there. But until then, here it is in trade paperback form. The book retails for $15.99, and it has 120 pages. Thor Epic Collection, Volume 22, Hell on Earth. This one I was really happy to get to announce, and now it's here physically. The reason why, it's not because it's my favorite era. As a matter of fact, this is kind of the era when I stopped reading Thor for a while, and there's a couple issues in here that I've never read. So why this is exciting is because we've had issue 23, volume 23 for so many years, and we had Blood and Thunder come out. I think this one came out, oh my gosh, time just flies. I believe it was last year, and that's volume 21. So now we have volume 22 and 23 to kind of wrap up the era of Thor, even though we are getting the Journey into Mystery series. It's just such a good feeling whenever you have a gap filler like this. So, finally, on the shelves where it properly belongs. So, we are talking about the return of Roy Thomas to the character in the aftermath of issue 475. And, as a matter of fact, here's all the credits. Roy Thomas, Glenn Greenberg, who actually does a couple of fill-in, and one really, really good story. Tom DeFalco coming in for issue 490 with Ron Friends. And then you have pencils in here. The big one being John Buscema. And I remember this issue right here of Avengers. Big John Buscema, man, coming in and just firing on all cylinders. Like, never liked drawing superheroes, but was such a freaking professional. Nobody even knew. So this does collect material from this Avengers volume, or annual right here, issue number 23. And then Thor annual number 19, and then Thor 476 to 490. This one here retails for $49.99, and it has 512 pages. So why I stopped reading this series during this time was not because I was hating it, not because I wasn't excited about the return of Roy Thomas. It was actually towards the end of Ron Mar's run that I just kind of gave up on Thor and other books because holy crap, there were so many X-Men titles. X-Men just dominated my wallet. It's like every month during these years, because we're looking at, 93, 94, if I'm not mistaken, 94, 95. During this years, there was a new title just about every couple of months. X-Men Unlimited, Generation X, and then they crossed over with all these other books, and I was like, I had to pay for my own gas, I had to make it to soccer practice, and then balance that with work. Oh, yeah. So I had to make some cuts at the comic store until I started working there. Then I got everything again. But at one time, I really did feel like I was buying every Marvel comic. So there's a couple of issues of Thor in here that I've not read. So let's actually talk about what's in here. So you have Roy Thomas writing the story of the Avengers, which pretty much puts Loki and Pluto together to go and fight off the Avengers. And Pluto makes an oath to Loki that, hey, I'm going to go and kill Thor for you, and that continues into the Thor annual, which is the Return of the Flame, a character that was previously introduced through the pages of Thor in the previous annual. This right here by Glenn Greenberg is a really great story. It's so sad. It's about this kid named Daniel who's a runaway teen, and he's like, yeah, I just kind of want to make it back home. Tired of running away. You know, my dad and I got into a huge fight. So Thor takes him back home, only to learn of something horrible that's happened in Daniel's life. And it kind of ties into Thor in his relationship with his father. And he's thinking about his dad towards the end, and he's like, maybe a god can learn from a mortal. Thought it was a really good, just like 6 issues. There's pinups all the way in the back, even homage to Jack Kirby there. And then we have Thor 476. So these annuals are supposed to take place before issue 475 of Thor, but the way they came out, as you all know, these are reprinted sometimes in publishing order. So we have Thor with a new costume, but that costume gets the crap beat out of him by the Destroyer when Hela sends the Destroyer after Thor. And we have Roy Thomas writing the story and MC Wyman drawing it. And MC Wyman, actually, I liked his art. It felt like everybody wanted to be the Jim Lee or Image clone at the time, and MC Wyman was sort of like that, but he was a fast artist. And everybody was just so beefed up during this particular era. Like, even Loki gets beefed up. I'll show you a couple of pictures here. So you have the return of the Destroyer, but he's not the big return. The big return happened in issue 475, which is the whole mystery of why is Thor and Donald Blake, why are they 2 separate entities? What's going on here? Because we thought Odin had created Donald Blake as a punishment for Thor to teach him how to be mortal. Well, the whole mystery deepens here, and Jane Foster gets involved. This is also the era during the whole relationship between Thor and Sif. The High Evolutionary plays a big role in here. My boy Thunderstrike gets some love, and I do have to say something about Thunderstrike here in a little bit. We have the return of Roger Norville, who was a character created by Roy Thomas, I think around issue 276 maybe, of Thor, but he makes a return. He's the guy, the actual Thor with the red hair and the hammer. And yes, again, more of this relationship between father and son. The big return too is also Beta Ray Bill. Love when Beta Ray Bill plays a part in all these stories. Now, here, let me show you some of this beefed up Loki. There is a big anniversary issue though. Let's see if this is the one. Yes, issue 482. That may not seem like a typical anniversary issue because, we're used to issue 50, issue 75, issue 100, 125. 482, that's because it's the 400th issue with Thor in the title of Journey into Mystery that became the Mighty Thor. But yeah, even Loki, my dude, got beefed up for this to fight Thor. It felt like everybody had to be super muscular. Kind of reminded me a lot of the way that Roy Thomas would handle his Conan stories. And this whole story arc right here with Loki and the High Evolutionary, I never read that until these particular issues. There he is, Loki, all super beefed up now with a new mask and a new outfit. Yeah, I could see why some longtime readers were kind of leaving comics during this time in the 90s. But there's some good in here, though. I'm not going to lie. It's not that everything was great, but there is some good in here. There's some solid Roy Thomas dialogue and storytelling. There's the return of Curse. Of course, the person that is actually pulling the strings is a big surprise. Now, the fight with Hulk, and that leads into the last issue that's collected in here. The last issue that's collected in here spoils something that happens in the pages of Thunderstrike. I'm not going to go over it. I'm not even going to show you the cover because the cover itself is a spoiler. And I feel like, man, now we need a Thunderstrike collection. Because I really like that character. I like the character of Eric. And if you hadn't read what happens in Thunderstrike, then issue 490, which is written by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz, would spoil something big that happens in those pages. So, if you're a stickler for having to read everything in continuity, or in the way that it was coming out, then maybe try to pick up. I know we only have like 2 collections with Thunderstrike, and it's just the first few issues. Nothing really collects it in whole. But I kind of wish they would put those Thunderstrike issues in Epic Collection. Just one. That's all we need. All right, let's look at the back extras. So we don't really have a lot of extras because sometimes the house ads are put in between issues. But we do have some swimsuit goodness. It's a ridiculous one by Dan Panosian, who's changed his style so much. And the book, again, 512 pages, retailing for $49.99. And now is the part of the segment where I remind people to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. But also where we show off what all the spines of the books that are coming out this week look like. So in case you're wondering. And again, the Marvel Masterworks, those are the standard edition covers. Alright, let's jump back to it. Ghost Rider, Marvel Masterworks, Volume 5. So this is the standard edition. There's always a direct market cover with these that comes out on the same day. We have 2 Marvel Masterworks this time around. Marvel Masterworks is making a comeback. I think in the month of May, people were worried that, wait, there's only like 1 Masterwork, and then there was none in the month of April. But now we're back. Now I think we got a total of 4 Marvel Masterworks this time around in this month. So here are all the credits. Michael Fleischer writing the stories, Don Perlin drawing most of these, Carmen Infantino doing a backup story, Alan Cooperberg, Herb Trimpe, Jim Shooter, and then you have the inkers, letterers. Your table of contents, here's a picture of Ghost Rider against the Orb, so it's the return of the Orb. And then you have an introduction here by Ralph Macchio. I think the way he pronounces it is Macchio, though. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Not the Karate Kid. That guy pronounces it Macchio. This introduction is so detailed and so amazing. I usually don't read introductions by Roy Thomas or Ralph Macchio until after I'm done reading the stories, because they just go so detailed into what happens, and I don't think Ralph does as much as like Roy does. But what goes into these issues that I don't want any spoilers. And for the first time, I'm reading these stories. I'd never read these stories. Like, Ghost Rider was a character that I wasn't big into until the 90s Ghost Rider, Danny Ketch. And there's a lot of goodness in here. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's the way that Michael Fleischer writes these stories. It's episodic. It doesn't feel like it continues into the next story arc. There's not a big overall arc. It's just, you could read this as your first time reading the character of Johnny Blaze and still get to know the character. So it kicks off with one of my favorite stories here, with the story of Clem. And it's just Ghost Rider running into somebody that needs some help because he's stranded on the road. They run into some bikers, and then they get picked up by this trucker who's named Clem. And Clem's like, yeah, come on in here. Welcome to Clem Barstow. Welcome to his semi-truck. And he helps them along the road. And then there's a little bit of a twist with the ending of who Clem was and why I really like that story. We have Carmine Infantino, who of course was very popular for drawing the Distinguished Competitions Flash, but this time around he's drawing a story that ties more into the Knight Rider. I think eventually he would become the Phantom Rider, the original Ghost Rider, this guy right here from the West. And because of the popularity of the 50th issue that had both of them teamed up, in here it's like they're trying to bring him back more and more. So this is an interesting take on the Sirens and Chronos right here. It involves a missile, so it's not your stereotypical type of retelling of that story. This is a story about Johnny Blaze falling in love with the wrong person. Now here comes the Orb, so it's the return of the Orb, somebody that blames Johnny Blaze for the way that he looks all disfigured. And, you know, when you're talking to a guy with a flaming skull, I'm not sure how you can complain. Then we have this team up that a lot of people have been wanting, and that is the Werewolf by Night team up. But it's also the return of this villain right here, Tatterdemalion, whatever. Anyway, but it is the team up of Jack Russell and Johnny Blaze in this particular issue. And then we have more of the tie-ins here, or more of these tying these stories together of the Knight Rider with Wait, that is the Knight Rider, sorry. I'm so used to calling him the Phantom Rider. With Ghost Rider, because fans just kept asking for it. And honestly, I kind of dug it. And I like the fact that it only happened a couple of times. It doesn't happen, like, all the time. Because if you read the Danny Ketch era of Ghost Rider, there was a lot of team-up with Johnny Blaze. And it's all brought by this guy right here, Mondarch. So he Moondark, not Mondarch. He makes a return. Then we have the Apparition, who's a brand new character in the series. And towards the end of this run, we have maybe a story that kind of is all tied together by the Water Wizard, even though it's not, because they still feel like they're standalone stories. But he kind of ties the last 3 issues together. You have the return of the Arabian Knight, a character that was introduced a while back. I feel like the editors at the time were trying to get Fleischer to use characters that were introduced through Marvel Team Up or that hadn't been used for a while. So in the back, you do have some original covers. And I was going to say that about the covers. I really liked a lot of these covers. And these are drawn by Bob Budiansky of Transformers fame and different inkers. But just, I don't know, there was just something killer about his covers. It's a solid artist. Like this one here is actually inked by Frank Miller. And then the biographies back there. And the Marvel Masterworks. So this book retails for $75 and it has 296 pages. But it's not the only Marvel Masterwork this time around. Marvel Masterworks, The Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 6 is the other Masterwork this time around. So it's done in the same format as all the other Marvel Masterworks have been done for the last few years, with the faux leather underneath, printed at the Donnelly printer. And here you have the credits for the writing and the art, colors, letters, all of it in here. Bill Mantlo supplying most of the story in here, with Tom DeFalco helping him out with issue 71. Ed Hannigan, who I've come to appreciate because of this Marvel Masterwork. My gosh, he's a terrific writer. And for the first time ever, at least for me, I got to read the whole storyline of the Owl and the Octopus War. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but in the Marvel Spider-Man lore, they've always talked about this Owl and Octopus saga. And I never got to read the whole thing. I only got to read a couple of issues that I had found throughout the years. So we have another introduction here by Ralph Macchio, talking about the experience of not just these stories, but also working with Bill Mantlo and what kind of person he was, and just how much work he put into every issue that he did. And then talking about the art, and then also each of these issues. So we kick it off with issue 67. So this collects Spectacular Spider-Man 67 to 79. And there's just something really interesting about Ed Hannigan's art that I never noticed. But it feels like he has a Steve Ditko and Frank Miller mesh to his art that I've just really appreciated this time around. And it could be, like I said, a lot of these stories are new to me. We kick it off with Boomerang right there, still trying to prove himself to the Kingpin. Because, yes, this is before the whole Frank Miller Daredevil run where Kingpin becomes Daredevil's arch nemesis. But before he was Peter Parker's arch nemesis. This is a really beautiful couple pages right here that talks about pretty much the whole great power comes great responsibility. You know, a flashback to not just the life before he became Spider-Man, but right after he became Spider-Man. And it's all done just through a couple of pages, all honoring Uncle Ben and just how big of an impact he's had in Peter Parker's life. There's the return of the Robot Master there. There's obscure characters that make a return. Not obscure like Cloak and Dagger, but they do make a return here. Silvermane makes a big comeback here with some killer covers there. Yeah, I feel like Ed Hannigan doesn't get enough credit. He's a wonderful artist, and he grew on me so quick. At first, I thought it was... it was Frank Miller drawing some of these issues with inks by Al Milgrom, but no, it was Ed Hannigan. So I have to talk about this issue right here. This is a really interesting issue, and this is all about gun control, and it's a social commentary. Like, Spider-Man almost takes a back seat in this particular story to talk about the issues with guns back then. But Mantlo does it. He does something that is very difficult to do. He makes you see both sides of the story, right? It's one of these things that not a lot of writers do, because it's such a difficult task to do, to separate yourself from the actual story. Because no matter what, every writer tries to put a little of themselves in there. But I feel like Mantlo really nailed that. Like, there's arguments from both sides, and I thought it was a really great way of doing a social commentary without it being too much in your face. And like I said, it's interesting to see that even Spider-Man took a back seat. But the big story in here is this Owl and Octopus arc that kicks off with issue number 72, I think is what it is, and goes all the way to issue number 79. So with this particular issue, we do see the return of the Owl in the previous issue, but this one here, both of them are trying to take over the whole crime family in New York. So that's what this is, and it's a huge war that involves Black Cat, as you probably saw on the cover. And I forgot to talk about this character. So in here, it says this is the shattering conclusion to the Deborah Whitman saga. And it's interesting because they call that a saga, but not the Doc Ock and the Owl, which is the big story that's happening here. But I really thought that was a really good send-off to the character. I didn't know exactly how it was going to end. We have the return of the Black Cat for the 75th issue, where Spider-Man's so excited that she's alive, but it leads into this huge war that they get caught up on. And yeah, you have the character of the Gladiator playing a big role in this towards the end. The stories in here are solid. They're some of the best Bill Mantlo stories, and I'm a big fan of his Micronauts run, and I love his Hulk. But having never read some of these, this book right here, seal of approval this week from Near Mint Condition, or from the Uncanny Omar, really. There's Al Milgrom. I knew he was in here somewhere. The Return of the Boomerang. Look at that cover. That is killer. Surprised that they didn't use that one. But now we have Jim Mooney doing the finishes towards the art. But yeah, you can find out for yourself how the Owl and the Octopus saga ends. But if you're getting these, this is stories that are not collected in the omnibus, in the first omnibus. This happens after that first omnibus. All the way in the back, you do have some original artwork by Ed Hannigan and Al Milgrom doing the inks. And here's Bob Hall and Jim Mooney. Al Milgrom and Jim Mooney. Yeah, but Hannigan, I've become a fan of his because of this particular masterwork. The book retails for $75 and it has 336 pages. Last but certainly not least is Daredevil, Heaven Through Hell, Volume 4. Now, this is the hardcover collection, so it does have a dust jacket. As a matter of fact, we got to take the dust jacket off. Here's what it looks like. The flaps right there. But, yes, here's the image underneath the dust jacket. This is an OHC, meaning that it's taller in trim size and longer in trim size than your trade paperbacks or Marvel Masterworks. But it is bigger. Alright, so Volume 4, continuing Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil. Collecting issues 31 through 36 and Daredevil Woman Without Fear 1 through 3. Now, if I don't have to say it, I feel like I do, just in case you haven't read any of Chip Zdarsky's run. There's going to be some spoilers through here. Minor spoilers, but if you've read the run, really, really minor spoilers. Okay, and even if you don't finish watching this, the one thing I will say is, do not read Daredevil Woman Without Fear until you've read Devil's Reign, which is not collected in here, because Daredevil Woman Without Fear will spoil something that happens in Devil's Reign. So at least avoid that. Okay, now you can skip. But there is no next book. This is the last book I'm talking about. Alright, whatever. So, now we have Elektra playing the role of not just mentor, but also Daredevil. So she's taken in Alice from the previous issues, and she's playing the role of Daredevil. She made Matt a promise that she would do her best to be Daredevil while he's in prison. You can find out why he's in prison in the previous volumes. But yeah, she's trying, and really this new character, the Angel of Death that's come to Hell's Kitchen, it's kind of testing her to see if she can really live up to the expectations of being Daredevil, because you know Elektra's an assassin, so she has a whole sit down with Spider-Man there. Meanwhile, we still see Matt Murdock trying to survive in prison while keeping his secret identity a secret. But the biggest test comes with this, the big fight with Bullseye. Marco Cicchetto comes back in this particular book, but we also have some Mike Hawthorne artwork. And I believe it's Robert De La Cruz that does, or De La Torre that does the Daredevil Woman Without Fear. Actually, let me make sure I'm giving the credit to the right artist. It is... Nope. Rafael De La Torre, not Robert De La Torre. But yes, Marco Cicchetto coming back to draw this big fight between Bullseye and Elektra. Now, it's not just her that has to fight Bullseye and his whole team. She's not alone. There's somebody else that unsuspectingly joins her to fight Bullseye, and I thought that was a really badass team up. Yeah, this whole run has just been stellar, and you know, to me, it hasn't lost its steam. I thought it just got better and better, and it had me curious as to what's going to happen next. Now, issue 36 is the final issue that leads directly into the new Daredevil and Elektra series. So you can find out for yourself if Matt ever makes it out of prison, if he's found guilty, and who will take the role of Daredevil. Now, let's look a little bit at the artwork in here for Daredevil Woman Without Fear. So it's a 3-issue miniseries, and showcasing the relationship in the past of Elektra and Daredevil, and focusing more on her and how she got to this particular position. And like I said, there's a couple of pages in here that will spoil what happens in Devil's Reign, so do not read this until you read that. I'm skipping those pages on purpose. Now, let's look at the back here, because we have some variant covers all the way back here from all kinds of artists. Juan Cabal, Dan Panosian, Rob Liefeld, John Romita Jr., Jen Bartel, Peach Momoko, just to name a few of the artists. I really like this one by Jorge Fornes. It's a take back to those classic or actually Daredevil era by Frank Miller. You have some original pages here from Mike Hawthorne and Rafael De La Torre. And then your end sheets. The book retails for $39.99, and it has 232 pages. And that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor,
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
And those were the books for this particular week, as well as Black Cat Omnibus and the Avengers Omnibus Volume 1 reprint. Don't forget to leave your comments down below if you have any questions. Let me know which ones you are picking up, which ones you're hoping one day will be collected in an omnibus format. And that's it, everyone. I'm glad this segment is back. Got a lot of reading done. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.